Bonjour et bienvenue sur Tourisme Marimi, le podcast qui te fait découvrir les métiers et formations du tourisme. Cette semaine, on se retrouve pour un épisode un peu spécial puisqu'il est en anglais. J'accueille en effet Dinara, étudiante à Minerva KGI, un programme universitaire américain unique en son genre qui n'est pas spécialisé dans le tourisme mais qui permet d'étudier dans 7 pays en 4 ans. Dans cet épisode, Dinara te présente donc le fonctionnement très particulier de son école, de la manière dont elle suit ses cours à comment elle est évaluée, en passant par son organisation pour déménager dans ses différents pays d'accueil. Elle te partage également comment elle a vécu le confinement en Argentine et comment son école était involontairement déjà préparée à affronter cette crise sanitaire. Enfin, elle t'explique en détail le processus de candidature pour intégrer Minerva et les éléments sur lesquels il faut miser si tu souhaites toi aussi tenter ta chance. Alors pour les découvrir, je t'invite à rejoindre ma conversation avec Dinara. Hi Dinara, I'm so happy to have you today. To get started, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Dinara. I'm originally from Moscow, Russia, but I've spent the last 3 years studying in this university program. It's called Minerva KGI, and I spent the first year in San Francisco, and then every semester we moved to a new country, so I lived in quite a few places, and now I'm about to move to London in the UK next week, so I'm really excited to be here today and be talking about all of this with you all.
Okay, thank you. And could you talk a bit more about Minerva, the different countries you already went to and you are supposed to go thanks to this program?
Yeah, sure. So my major is in social sciences, and I also have a minor in business, and I've enjoyed that path to education quite a lot. And in the last few years, I've lived in the US, I've lived in India, in Korea, in Germany, and Argentina. So the two countries we have left are the UK and Taiwan. The coronavirus has changed plans a little bit for me when I was in Argentina, my semester just before the summer, but very luckily I am going to London. So I hope to finish my education just as it was planned.
So it's your 4th year now, right?
Yeah, it is my last year. Can't believe it. Time goes by so fast.
Yeah, that's true. And you were supposed to go to London on the last year, so it doesn't really change for you.
Yeah, it didn't change. We're unclear about what's going to happen in the spring semester, like whether Taiwan will take us or not, but hopefully it will. Yeah, I'm really excited in general for this year. Makes me appreciate it much more now that the world has changed.
I see. And do you have to choose your major from the very beginning, or does it take place on 2nd or 3rd year, for example?
Sure. So the first year at Minerva, it's foundational year, and everybody has the same classes. We learn about 100 different concepts that we'll be applying throughout the next years of our education. And so everybody has the same classes the first year. We don't have to declare a major. And then the second year, we kind of explore that more. I declared my major in the second year, but I've changed it a bit like in my third. So it's still kind of flexible. But second year, you take core courses that are related to your majors. And then third year, you get more specific and you choose your concentrations within those majors, or one major, depends on your choice. And then the fourth year, we're writing our capstone, which is kind of like a thesis paper. And it just gets from foundation to general to concentration, gets more specific with each year. And more interesting, I would say.
And regarding to your classes, you move to different campuses in different countries, but your classes are actually online. Is that right?
Yeah, so the thing is, the idea behind Minerva is instead of having a student campus, we kind of use the city that we live in as our campus. And the education we have, it's held on a platform that's called the Forum. So it's a special application that we use, and it's for small seminars, and it is held online, but it's all live. So we see our professors, we're in class, we're having discussions for 90 minutes, and it's all based on the science of learning, which kind of states that you learn the best when you're very engaged in what's happening, you're very active. And so that way, when we have no more than 20 students in class and we have a professor and a lot of small discussions within those 90 minutes, it kind of makes you dive very deep into what you're studying. And so the forum allows us to be moving and be around different places in the world, which is a great privilege, to be honest.
Yeah, that sounds nice. And I guess that thanks to this system, you've been able to still take your classes kind of normally, even during the crisis.
Yeah, I think Minerva was in a very interesting spot when the pandemic hit because we didn't change our approach to education at all. My classes kept going as they were. The only thing, though, is that some people wanted to get home to their families when we heard the news. So the location changed for many, but the classes themselves didn't. And that was a great advantage, I would say, to when I was looking at my friends who had to switch all of a sudden to online while they were used to more in-person classes, and it was really hard for them and I felt for them. But yeah, I think Minerva was weirdly prepared for what was about to come.
Yeah, so I guess that's another good point for this new educational system. But how is your schedule like? Because I believe your teachers are from all over the world, so I imagine that sometimes you can be bothered a bit with jet lag. So you may have classes very early in the morning or very late at night.
Yeah, sure. That's a great point. So our professors are also in different parts of the world, and Minerva tries their best to allocate the best class times for students who need them the most. So the core courses are usually taken in the first year. So students in the first year are usually in Korea and in India. So they will have like the best times for those classes. Personally, I never had to take a very late class, but I chose to do it once. So usually my classes start anywhere from 9 in the morning to like maybe 8 p.m. And then there was one specific class, it was with a professor that I really wanted to study with because I heard a lot of really good reviews about her. And her class was at 11 p.m. when I was in Korea, and I still went for it. I had the best experience. But then the time changed after daylight savings. And so the class started at 12 a.m. And that was really, really weird because I would make my coffee when all of my friends would go to sleep. I would go to the kitchen, make my coffee, and prepare for my business class. But I really enjoyed it. It was my choice. I could still have a class at like 4 p.m. with a different professor, but I preferred that one. And that, yeah, I would say that's pretty unusual, but like we're not forced to do it, at least in my experience.
Yeah, that's very unusual, but I guess it's part of the experience. And regarding your life on campus, do you have free time and what do you do with it? Because I've heard that it's pretty intense. You've got a lot of assignments and readings as well, so it's tough.
Yeah, intense is a very common word we use to describe Minerva. Intense and hectic. It depends by semester. So one semester I only have 3 courses because it was the first time we would be moving. So we spent one whole year in San Francisco and had more time to like adapt. But then when it was our first time to move to Korea, Minerva really wanted us to have not 4 courses per semester, but 3. So we'd have, as you said, like more free time to learn how to do this. But most semesters I have 4 courses. So it depends by semester and the priorities I have each semester. So sometimes I want to dive more into academics and dedicate more time to like doing my assignments perfectly, while other times I also want to travel during the semester. So when I was in Berlin, I actually went to Italy for a few days. I went to Paris for a few days. I went to different cities in Germany. And I really wanted to do it while I was in Europe because everything is so close, and I knew that that was my priority. So I would have to be more flexible with my classes and do work on the go. And while some other semesters, I wouldn't. Sorry, you were asking about how I spend my free time or how much free time I have. Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, exactly. It's very intense, but I guess and I hope you still got free time. So how do you spend it? Do you have time to explore the city? Or Minerva also asks you to get involved in local communities also?
There are different ways you can spend your free time. First of all, Minerva provides programming throughout the semester. It's called Student Experience. They provide a lot of different events, celebrations for students, but also they curate experience, such as when we were in Argentina, we had a blind tango class and Minerva organized it and we all danced in the dark or tried our best. And we were in Korea, we made kimchi all together. So that was all Minerva curated. But depending on the city, there are also a lot of things you can do and a lot of different ways you can find things to do. So for example, in San Francisco, there's meetup.com, there's creative mornings that happen every month. There are a lot of different platforms where you can find people and do things. Like when I was in San Francisco, I found a meetup for deaf people and people who are learning American Sign Language. And I went to that and I had fun. There are also a lot of photographers in the city who want to like expand their portfolios. And like I got invited, I did that as well, just to do photo shoots around the city, and that was fun. For example, when I was in India, I found it really easy to make friends with people because they're also welcoming and open. And I actually spend more time with local friends. So I went to my friend's house and I went to a wedding, or spent a lot of time just talking with the people I met. And that was kind of like my way of spending my free time. While in Korea, blockchain industry was booming there, and I think it's still booming. And so a lot of events related to blockchain and the communities that were there. And I actually spent a lot of time at the blockchain space that's called Nons in Korea. And that was my way of spending my free time. So depending on the city, activities change as well. I just think you need to prioritize what you want to do each semester. So it's more intentional because, as you said, it is pretty intense and there are a lot of things to do. So you gotta plan it out a little bit, I would say.
I see. And what about the grading system? Because I think it's kind of special once again. It looks like GPA or something like that, no?
Yeah, GPA is just the American way of finding the average grade, right? And at Minerva, our scale is from 1 to 5, 1 being you don't know anything about the topic, and 5 being you applied this concept in a novel, original way, and 5s are like unicorns at Minerva. They're very difficult to get, and whenever somebody gets a 5, we're celebrate together. So the professors, they grade our knowledge in class while we are answering a question and answering polls, because each class will have 2 polls, one in the beginning, one in the end, where we have to answer and write it down. And professors also grade us when we submit our assignments, and they grade our knowledge. And usually most of the grades you get are from 2 to 4. So 2 meaning that you know the concept, but you didn't apply it very well. 3, you know the concept and you applied it well. 4, you did it amazingly. And 5, as I said, is a novel, original perspective that you provided. So that's how we are graded. And then from that, we get the average, which is then converted to the A to D system, I guess.
Okay, so it kind of looks like the French grading system in a way, because we basically have a 20-point scale, but actually you never get 20. It's very rare. If you get 17, it's already really, really good. But you said you were tested through the class, but what about exams?
We have no exams or no tests. The idea at Minerva is that we get different assignments throughout the semester. So for each course, maybe 4, or if you are doing a natural sciences major or a computational sciences major, there are much more assignments. They're just smaller. And for example, you are giving an essay to write that is up to 2,000 words about, for my arts and social change class last semester for the final project, I had to choose an art movement and write about it for up to 2,000 or 3,000 words. And there are certain concepts I could use to guide my writing. And in the first year, we're introduced to different concepts, and we also have learning outcomes that we can apply in essays. So, for example, if I'm writing about an art movement such as anarchism, and I have certain HCs, which are the concepts like interpretive lens or context or gap analysis, something like that, I can look at the description of the concepts and I can see where they fit in my essay, and then use them to make my essay much stronger, my points much stronger. And there are also certain learning outcomes that are very specific to each course. So in my arts and social change course, the learning outcomes that I would have to apply would be more related to multimedia. So we have general concepts and we also have concepts related to each course. And they kind of are the framework that we use when we do the assignments. And they're also really useful when I just look at the world and some situations that I face. How can I use this, for example, the HC context, to understand a political problem that's happening in my country, So that's how we do the assignments, and there are a lot of them, and some of them are very interesting, some are not. I think my favorites are group assignments. We have them, I think, mostly every semester, because that way you can actually talk to other students and share your perspectives and work together. And I also love location-based assignments. It's basically when we're given a task to complete in the city. For example, interview a person who works at a big company and you want to understand their structure, or go out in the street and find a variable such as trash cans that you want to measure around the city and then create a model based on that. So they're very interesting ones, and it's very different from the traditional, I guess, tests and exams that I was used to in high school.
Oh, for sure. I guess it's way more intense, but you really retain the things you learn because when you have exams, often you tend to wait till the day before the exam to review and cram everything. And the next day, when the exam is done, you forget it all. So it's kind of a shame because you're supposed to learn and grow at university. So I guess Minerva's method is a better one here.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I think so. And how do you organize to move out? Does Minerva help you to find accommodation and to feel welcome in the hosting country?
Sure, so we never have to look for accommodation unless we want to live independently. We can apply for that, but I never lived independently. I've always lived in Minerva residence halls, so that's already there. Also, whenever we arrive, we have elevation. That's what we call it. It's kind of like an onboarding process where Minerva explains some cultural peculiarities of the place that we're going to be in. They help us with like finding grocery stores. We have usually a neighborhood tour to see like all the important spots that we need, such as where to get a SIM card, where's the local bank, how to take out money, stuff like that. Also, safety, especially with COVID, we have to like comply with a lot of different safety measures. So Minerva definitely helps us with starting the semester with having some knowledge about the place that we live in because it changes so much. I also think it gets much easier every time you do it. Well, it kind of gets easier every time you do it. So now that I'm moving to London, I already know that how much I need to pack. I need to check how to get from the airport to the residence hall, what is the best option. I kind of know which groceries I will need to get for the first few days. So it's always there. I think the more interesting part starts when you kind of want to integrate yourself in the city. So what events do I go to? Where do I meet people? How to make friends with locals and kind of honor their communication styles, I would say, just how to fit in. So that's very interesting. And we also have this thing at Minerva, it's called Civic Projects. And it's when Minerva has local partners in the city, whether it's businesses or nonprofit organizations or certain people that are connected to Minerva. And we usually have this event in the beginning of the semester where students meet the partners. Then moving on, we can like do projects together that would help local organizations in any way we can help. And that's also an interesting way to build local connections. So after I leave a city, I know that I have at least a small network there that I can go back to. And also that enriches the experience in every country a lot.
That's always nice to have support from your institution. And can you apply for these partners for internships, for example?
Yeah, I know like a friend of mine, he did a civic partnership in Korea. We did it together and he wanted to continue working for them. So that extended to the summer. And I actually think he might still be working for them, which is really nice. Yeah, it depends on what you want from it. If you just want to get to know people and learn something about the industry that you're interested in, or just hang out with people, whatever it is, or if you are interested in continuing to work with them, depends.
And you, how did you find your internship? I mean, if you had to do one, is it mandatory to do one during the summer, or can you choose to write a thesis instead, or work on a special project?
We don't have to do internships in the summer. We don't have to do civic projects. It's just kind of, civic projects is just an option for us to participate in. So I did that when I was in Korea, but when I was in India, I was a bit tired, I'd say. So I just decided to focus on my academics instead and my personal relationships, and I didn't take on that additional responsibility. So it's definitely up to us. Minerva like doesn't force us. I would say the one that I enjoyed the most would be the one I did in San Francisco with the San Francisco General Hospital. We had two teams from Minerva working with them, and the project was about bettering the experience of the healthcare providers and the clients at the Women's Health Clinic at the Zuckerberg Hospital in San Francisco. And we tried to apply human-centered design and design thinking within the project, and we would go there like every Friday to shadow the doctors and interview the patients. And in the end, we wrote a paper that they could use as a start for their research. And that was something that I enjoyed so much because it felt like we actually made a little impact at the hospital, or at least at that department of the hospital. And I think I learned so much by applying the things I learned in my first year into this very practical, real world example. And I also got to work with other Minerva students, which was a blast. So it was very fulfilling, and I'm really grateful that Minerva provided opportunities like that for us to participate in.
That's very cool to see how flexible it is, how you can choose your classes, if you want to do an internship or not, help local communities, or just rest if you need to. I think it's very nice. So, how did you discover Minerva and decided to apply? Because if I remember well, it's very hard to get in. So, yeah, how did you apply? Your story? Have you been abroad before?
Yeah, sure. So when I was 15, I moved to the US for 1 year because I won the scholarship by the US Department of State, and I lived in a host family for 1 academic year. I went to an American high school. That's where my story began, I guess. And after I returned to Russia, I had to finish high school and then think about my future. And once I lived in the US, I really enjoyed getting to know different people, and I really enjoyed being abroad and studying abroad. So I finished high school, wanted to study in the US, but that didn't work out. I ended up going to a Russian top university, and I learned about Minerva on a social media app, I think. It's called VK, it's called Kontakte. It's like Russian Facebook. And someone who also did the same exchange program that I did asked the group, like, hey guys, have you heard about Minerva? Looks pretty interesting. And so I Googled Minerva, went on their website, couldn't believe my eyes what I saw because it sounded so perfect for me because I really wanted to get my education but also see the world. And I knew that the acceptance rate was extremely low. So I wouldn't say I was super enthusiastic about applying because of that number, but I still felt like I need to try because it felt like the perfect thing for me. And so I applied, I got my decision like 3 or 4 weeks later, cried my eyes out. It was at 7 in the morning that I got the email. And from there on, it just kind of, yeah, I can't believe it was 4 years ago. It's pretty special. So that's how my journey started, I guess.
I imagine. And how was the application like? Is it like a test with questions to answer, or do you have to send your academic records from the previous year and write a cover letter or something?
Yeah, so Minerva application really differs from other American institutions' application processes. So you do need to provide your academic records, of course, like your grades and stuff, but you don't need any extra exams that people usually pay for, like TOEFL or SATs or ACTs. That's what like American students often take. Instead, the application is absolutely free. You take the tests, the challenges, as we call them, that Minerva designed on the website, and you also need to provide 4 to 6 accomplishments that you're proud of and describe them, talk about them, and that's what you send pretty much. And I found it to be a very interesting process because I also got to reflect on my life through it. Like, what are the things that I'm proud of? Why does it matter to me? How can I talk about it? And the same thing with challenges. There are 6 challenges that you need to complete. It's almost fun because they're also different. There's like something about writing, there's also something about abstract thinking. There's a part when you need to talk and like express yourself and answer some questions in that format. So I enjoyed the application process, which I never thought I would say about a university program, but it is pretty different, yeah.
And did you have time to prepare so you could record yourself and write at your own time? Or once you press start, you got 2 hours to complete everything, for example?
I applied, as I said, a few years ago, so I'm not sure how it has changed, but you can't write it on your own. When you click start, the camera is recording you, your microphone is on, your screen is also recorded to make sure that you're not cheating, you're not looking at other websites and stuff like that. Yeah, so once you start, you're giving a certain amount of time to like write about a topic or something, and then you move on. I think you can choose to do a few challenges and do the other in a different time. I'm not sure how it is right now, but it's supervised, so to make sure that people are honest and don't try to cheat the system.
I understand, but the kind of questions that are asked seem to be very deep, so in my opinion, you would need a little more time to reflect, especially to be able to really express what you have inside, but I guess it's part of the challenge.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me clarify the accomplishments part. When you describe what you're proud of, it's not timed. You can do it for as long as you want. You can write as much as you want. It's just the challenges that are like timed. So for the accomplishments, I actually, like as you said, I had time to reflect and like change them or think about something else or, refine my writing. It was just the challenges that were more fast-paced.
Oh, all right. And concerning the challenges, is the way you think equally important as the answer itself? For example, if you don't cite a lot of references or surveys, but you bring ideas on your own that can argue and justify in a logical way to show your personality and the way you're reasoning.
Oh yeah, sure. The Minerva application process, in my opinion, it just evaluates how you think. So I don't think they would ask questions that would require you to cite some scientific papers in the application process, because that's, I think, what makes it almost impossible to prepare for, because it's not like that you need to memorize some things that you need to like show off, or that there's no specific essay format that you have to present, like in SATs, for example. It's your way of showing how you think and being who you are. And of course, you need to know math, to find the solutions for the problems that they give you. And you need to know how to write in English to be able to write the essay. But beyond that, you just show how you think. And I think that's what's most important.
Oh, okay, I get it now. Thanks. So today, what is the thing you're the most proud of?
In life?
Let's say in your Minervan experience.
Well, I think in general, if I reflect on my Minerva experience, I'm most proud of the connections I've made, both within the community and outside in every city I've lived in. I think I was able to connect very deeply with some extremely interesting people, and they're still my friends. And sometimes I get like teary just thinking about how many people I've met and who've touched my life in positive, meaningful ways. It's kind of weird sometimes, when you're walking down the street for example, for me in Moscow, and I'm walking and like in front of my eyes, I see a street in India, and I'm remembering how I was walking to my favorite restaurant and how the owner and I would talk for hours after the restaurant closed up until like 2 a.m, and he would be telling me about the Indian economic system or how people lived in the area where he was from, and like all the travels and stuff. Like those things, they're very difficult to put into words and are difficult to put on your resume or, like say like, oh, this is what I'm most proud of. But to me personally, these are the things that matter the most in my development in life. And so I would say I'm most proud of the friends I've made at Minerva and in the world. And I really hope to continue building those connections and learning more about them and about different ways of living on this planet.
I agree with you. It's not a common answer, but it actually is something to be proud of because it's really not that easy. For example, I did an exchange program in Japan 3 years ago, and as I was surrounded by a lot of foreigners in my classes and my dormitory, and as Japanese people are pretty shy in general, I didn't have the opportunity to make that many local friends with whom I'm still in touch with today. So it's really a big win that you have been able to do it. And on the contrary, maybe you have several, but which time had been the hardest one? The time when you told yourself that this time you can't think that you'll make it, that you want to go home?
So first of all, I'm extremely blessed to have a place to call home that I want to return to, and it's something I realized while being away for so long. At Minerva, I think it made me learn that really fast as a young adult. And I think the most difficult time was probably this year when I was in Argentina, because the country went into strict lockdown on March 20th, and that was during my semester, and they banned all flights until September 1st at some point. So there was no way to get out. And that was actually like my worst fear. Like I was living it, because as soon as I got to South America, it was like the furthest away I've ever been from home. And I had this like little anxiety inside of me, like, oh my gosh, what if like I'm stuck here? That was like before the pandemic, before everything. I just had this like little feeling inside me, which was irrational. And then I got to live through it, which was really ironic. I think it was really difficult just because I was isolated by myself in my apartment, and I really wanted to go home, and just the uncertainty of not knowing when you can get home, I think that's what was like the most difficult part, because usually if I'm spending a semester in Seoul in Korea, I know that by December 31st I'm going to be leaving and go somewhere else. But, to be honest, I wouldn't change anything about that experience that I had this year. when I got on the last flight out, I flew to Moscow. It kind of showed to me that it was certainly a very difficult time, but I lived through it, and I still had my Minerva friends with me who are going through the same thing, and we could hold on to each other and like support each other through that. Also, Minerva did their best to like help us. I don't mean like Minerva just as an institution, but the Minerva staff that was working in Buenos Aires, they were also going through the consequences of the pandemic, but they didn't leave us. They were always there for us, even though they didn't have to be so nice and kind and supportive. They certainly were. And yeah, wouldn't change it though. It was extremely difficult and I did want to go home, but it also taught me how to function in times when things are not under my control. And they also taught me to adapt better. I think that's a huge skill that I learned at Minerva in general about how to adapt to your environment and your circumstances. So that was that skill learned to the extreme. And now it really makes me appreciate every single thing I do much more. It's kind of like a reset button. And yeah, even from the most difficult time, I think came out really beautiful lessons.
Yeah, exactly. And even if this crisis is terrible, I think it had bring more caring and solidarity between us.
Yeah, certainly. I also feel like the time I was in Argentina during the lockdown, it gave me a really profound perspective on the effects of the pandemic that we often don't see on social media or discuss in the news, such as that the poorest of the poor suffer the most. And when I was in Argentina, after the first month of the lockdown, like many people couldn't afford rent in Buenos Aires anymore. Many people were in the streets, especially because Argentina was already in an economic crisis for a few years before this started. And I got to see people and like do my best to buy food for people or interact with the people in the streets, at least for a little bit. And it also kind of opened my eyes on how we're very privileged. We just don't realize how privileged we are. And I'm just really grateful that I was there at that moment because I could help at least a little bit to the local community by buying from local businesses and supporting them as much as I can as they were opening up. And also, as I said, like buying whatever the people that I saw asked me to buy for them, from milk to diapers to water to whatever that was. And that's also, I think, some sort of impact that maybe it was nice for me to be away from home, but maybe I could still contribute something in the area where I was. And so looking back, yeah, really grateful for the whole experience.
Oh, I feel you. And do you have an idea about what you want to do in the future? Are you thinking about applying to Minerva's master degree, or do you have other plans?
Great question. I don't think I will be doing my master's anytime soon. I want to focus on this year before I think about my future because as this year has shown me, I can make as many plans as I want, but it may not go as I plan at all. So I'm just really focused on this next semester and working and doing my classes and seeing my friends again. And then I will see how things go. I certainly have some ideas for what I want to do in the future, but I don't really want to talk about them yet, just because I'm not sure how it's all going to go with the situation in the world and how this year and the classes I take, because I'm taking very different classes this year, which direction that will take me. But I'm certainly excited to continue working on my Instagram and making YouTube videos and like talking about Minerva with the people that ask me. And for sure, I know that after Minerva, I'll continue traveling. That cannot leave my life for sure.
Yeah, perfect transition. It's true that you have a YouTube channel and an Instagram account, thanks to which I discovered you and Minerva. So, of course, everything will be linked in the description of the podcast. I really appreciate your content.
Thank you.
And just to conclude, because you often share what you read or watch, do you have a book or a movie or anything that really helped you or inspired you to find your path?
That's a beautiful question. When I was a teenager, I read this book by Somerset Maugham. It's called Of Human Bondage. And it's a classic. It's fiction, and it's a book about the life of a young man and how he goes through falling in love, falling out of love, pursuing this degree at university, changing it, doing this work, doing the other work. And even though it was not like a self-help book or a book about happiness, it just showed me at an early age that everything happens for the best, and life is unpredictable and there's beauty in it. And if I want to do something, I should at least try and just follow my inner voice, I would say. So that was a very long, interesting book that gave me a taste of realizing that life is extremely interesting, whatever happens to you. So that kind of helped me lead the life that I lead now.
I guess it's a great way to end this episode. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation.
No, thank you.
I hope you'll have a good day and I wish you to move safely in London. I hope you'll love the city.
Thank you so much. Let me knock on wood. I've been doing it all month since I bought the ticket that everything goes smoothly. Thank you so much.
Thank you and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Merci de t'être rejoint à cet échange avec Dinara, j'espère qu'il t'a plu. Si c'est le cas, tu peux nous le faire savoir en t'abonnant, en laissant 5 étoiles et quelques lignes sur pourquoi tu l'apprécies. Si tu souhaites en savoir plus sur Minerva, tu peux consulter la chaîne YouTube et le compte Instagram de Dinara qui y documente son expérience étudiante. Les liens sont en description. N'ayant pas eu le temps d'aborder tous les sujets, notamment l'aspect financier, je t'ai fait une petite sélection de ces vidéos pour en savoir plus sur les avantages et inconvénients d'étudier à Minerva et comment bénéficier d'une bourse, ce programme se voulant le plus inclusif possible, bien que ce soit très cher comparé à l'éducation en France. Si tu sens que ce cursus est pour toi, sache que les candidatures pour la rentrée d'automne 2021 sont déjà ouvertes et tu as jusqu'au 1er novembre 2020 pour soumettre ton dossier, alors je te conseille de te remettre aux maths et à l'anglais dès maintenant si t'es un peu rouillé pour mettre toutes les chances de ton côté. Bon courage et on se retrouve dimanche prochain pour un nouvel épisode de Tourisme Marimi. Salut!